it is impossible to understate what a seismic event Xevious was for those early days of the Japanese video game industry. While Xevious was definitely a success internationally, in Japan, in 1983, it was the game. Everyone had to play it, everyone was talking about it, and Xevious had long-reaching consequences. There were a lot of game developers who made the biggest hits of the 90s that were directly inspired to get into video games because of Xevious. One of them even started a fanzine about the game called Game Freak, and then he later used the title of that zine as the name of his company. Xevious was a very big deal, and yet it never really managed to jump to other mediums. There wasn't a Xevious anime in the mid-80s about heroic space pilots. There isn't any Xevious manga that you can find. No stage shows. Just a series of increasingly obscure games living in the shadow of that overwhelmingly popular original. In 1989, Namco commissioned a short CGI clip based on Xevious. It's roughly 2 minutes long, and it's about a silent hero in a spacesuit who sees attacking ships, goes after them, and then gets shot down himself. That got screened a few times, and it was put on a VHS cassette about one of those games. But this isn't the Xevious movie that you clicked on this video for. Because about 10 years later, around 2001, Namco produced a theatrical Xevious film. A film that, as far as I can tell, screened for 1 week at one theater, and was then locked away, never to be seen again. The only footage that ever emerged of this movie is this very short clip that appears to have been taken from a work print that Namco included in a video on the history of the Xevious series that they put online in 2020. That sentence was actually longer than the entirety of the clip. It never had a home release, and there wasn't even a trailer online. At least there wasn't until today. Before I get to the main event, let's talk about some background. To create this CGI animated movie, Namco enlisted Groove Corporation. Groove Corporation was a very, very short-lived production company, only active for about 3 years as far as I can tell. And they didn't just work in animation. Their primary business was live-action films, and they produced a few albums as well. Their animation group went under the label G Station, and their biggest production was an animated web series called Six Angels. You probably haven't seen Six Angels because it was notoriously awful. Though I really want to point out the villain here, who really looks like he should be telling me who all my base belonged to. They also produced a television series called Geisters, a science fiction show set in a post-apocalyptic Earth where the titular Geisters are warriors who came from space. Again, it's not very well regarded. Both of those shows did use some CGI for certain elements, so it's not like G-Station went into the Xevious production completely lost. But their other work was not a good sign for the Xevious movie. I had another reason for bringing up Six Angels and Geisters, though. Xevious was cross-promoted with them. All of the Six Angels web shorts were compiled into a single film, while about half of the Geisters series was edited down to make a movie. Those movies were teamed up with Xevious as part of a road show. The idea is they'd only have to make one print of each of those movies, and then take it around to different theaters. As far as I can tell, this road show only ever made one stop. It was in this theater in a mall attached to the train station at Ikebukuro in Tokyo. The branding has changed in the 20 years since then, but it is the same theater. On Saturday, August 10th, 2002, Xevious opened at that theater along with Six Angels and Geisters, and it began a 1-week run. 20 people showed up for that first screening. I don't have any accounts for how the other 6 screenings went, but it's safe to assume that unless you're watching this video the moment it drops, then more people have watched this on YouTube than have seen the Xevious film. In the lobby, you could get a flyer about the history of Xevious, purchase a reissue of a classic game music compilation, or pay 700 yen for a 4-page pamphlet on the film. That pamphlet might have been an issue of G-Station's file, a bit of promotional material that G-Station produced on their anime. I haven't been able to confirm that, though, since I could only find a scan of the pamphlet's interior. If you want to dig into this subject further, finding a copy of that issue of G-Station's file is probably the next step in the chain. On the way into the theater, you were handed a small postcard-sized picture, and then you settled in to watch Xevious. If you weren't one of the people who went to that very brief run at this theater, then it is extremely likely that you will never be able to see Xevious. We know that Xevious was scheduled for a DVD release only a month after that screening. Xevious did not get that DVD release. The rest of G-Station's catalog eventually got some kind of home release in one form or another. Here, you can go buy Geisters right now. Though, fair warning, the US distributor went out of business before they completed the series. But you'll never find a Xevious DVD or Blu-ray or whatever comes next. By 2004, Groove Corporation would fold, and there are rumors that the masters for these movies vanished along with them. Namco seems to at least have a copy of some things, hence the short clip from the work print, but it's very likely that they don't have the rights to release it themselves. Xevious the movie is trapped in limbo, though considering how abruptly the home release was cancelled, it's very possible that everyone involved prefers that it's buried. But hey, maybe somewhere in a warehouse in Japan, in a dusty box buried in a back corner, there's a case of Xevious VHS cassettes. Stranger things have happened. Xevious the movie faded from memory. No one thought about it, no one remembered it. It was reduced to a small piece of trivia where a few fans of the Xevious series might occasionally go, "Did you know they made a movie once?" And this is where I come in. Hello. I've made a hobby of scrounging around for the weird and exotic aspects of video games, especially the Japanese side of things. There's often an enormous wall between those Japanese games and the rest of the world. As part of that, I've taken up documenting the libraries of various Japanese game systems, and that's what most of the videos on this channel are about. A few years ago, while doing my background research for the Famicom version of Xevious, I came across this paragraph on the Japanese Wikipedia page for the game. A Xevious movie? But then again, there's a lot of animated adaptations of video games that I haven't heard of. I tried to find some footage of it, and discovered that there was none. So that's been rattling around in the back of my head for a while. Occasionally I've poked around to see if anything was available, and of course it never was. But then, about a week ago, at the time this video goes up, I was digging through the depths of the backstock at Suragaya. They're the largest online store in Japan for used media. I happened to punch in Xevious, mainly looking to see if I could find something like an obscure handheld game, or the RPG book, maybe some Xevious throw pillows, and there was this. A promotional disc with 6 anime, and the word Xevious written on it. Well, for the most part, Suragaya doesn't have any descriptions of their items. What you see is what you get. I was looking at it going, is that a promotional disc for the Xevious movie? What's it gonna have on it? I decided to take a gamble and spent 2,336 yen to have it shipped to me. That's roughly $15. And of course it's a 20-year-old CD. I didn't even know how likely it was that I'd be able to pull information off of it. A few days later it arrived, I popped the disc in, ran the autoplay, and I got this. An auto-cycling loop of 6 trailers, and Xevious was the second of them. There's no video controls here. Interacting with your keyboard will close the program. So if you wanted to watch the trailer at the end, then you'd have to sit through the whole thing. And you might have noticed that the video quality here is not great. However, I dug into the files on the disc and found this video file. All of the video is encoded in MPEG-2, and it's very slightly squeezed horizontally. The software on the CD that plays the video was a pretty awful decoder, but I could at least run this through some upscaling myself. And after a small amount of work to make sure I got the aspect ratio right, I became the first person outside of Japan to see more than 5 seconds of the Xevious movie. Now for preservation purposes, I don't want to just have the trailer in the middle of my video on it, so I've uploaded a video to YouTube that's just the trailer by itself, and I've uploaded the original file exactly as it is on the CD to the Internet Archive. So if you want that raw footage, it's right there. I think I've kept you waiting long enough, so I'm going to play the trailer, and then when it's done, I'm going to tell you what we know about the film itself. Wow, I know, right? That was a lot of build-up for not very much. The text that appears in the trailer doesn't amount to much. It translated as, "The seal has been broken. Xevious, the original shoot-'em-up, is now in theaters. The detailed computer graphics are a masterpiece. Xevious the movie has finally been unveiled. See the road show August 3rd at Ikebukuro Theater." It must have been delayed a week after they finished this trailer. The trailer doesn't have the movie's subtitle on it either. The full official title of the movie is Xevious Shirarezaru Kako, or Xevious, the Shrouded Past. That title implies that it's a prequel to the games, but good luck getting this movie to fit in with even the loose continuity of the Xevious series. I don't have a full plot synopsis, but here's what I could assemble from the sources that were available online. Takeru is a planetary explorer, and his girlfriend Sarah, who is also a planetary explorer, mysteriously vanished around Jupiter a year ago after reporting a strange spatial disturbance. At the start of the movie, he's remembering her, and then a mysterious spacecraft appears and opens fire on all of the ships assembled there. The surprise attack takes out most of the troops, and Takeru attempts to fight back. He's shot down as well, and crashes into a kilometer-long spacecraft that appeared alongside the mysterious attacker and was helping them. The interior of the ship where Takeru landed resembles a temple, though he's the only person on board. At the heart of the mysterious ship, he finds an android woman by the name of Lu-Mi, who happens to look exactly like his missing girlfriend. However, Lu-Mi is a 10,000-year-old computer, so Takeru immediately realizes it's not his missing lover. 10,000 years ago, Lu-Mi ran the Earth's defenses against the supercomputer GAMP. And the ancient evil supercomputer GAMP is the only recognizable plot element from the game. GAMP was built by Lamu, an ancient civilization that I'm not sure if it was supposed to be Mu or Lemuria. After the Lemuians? Yeah, let's go with that. After the Lemuians turned over control of their civilization to GAMP, it went crazy and tried to kill them all. They built Lu-Mi and her spacecraft, the Kiyu, while GAMP built an enormous super weapon called the Andor. The final battle between these two was at Jupiter, and as the Andor has reappeared, it begins sucking up Jupiter's atmosphere to prepare for an all-out attack on Earth. Takeru and Lu-Mi have just 40 minutes to stop it before the world is devastated. And that's pretty much where my information ends. Presumably there's a bunch of dogfighting. At the end of the movie, Takeru enters cyberspace to destroy the core. I think you can piece most of it together. Gamp itself is not a character in the movie. It doesn't appear on screen, there's just waves of faceless enemies. Kind of like the video game now that I think about it. Takeru does have a comedy sidekick, an AI called Martha that acts as a nagging wife. Yeah, that's the direction the descriptions are going with it. Martha is a conveniently spherical floating robot, which is really easy to animate. The movie Xevious was directed by Kazumichi Kiyono and written by Shimone Shido, two people with no other known credits. One person whose name you won't find in the credits for Xevious is Masanobu Endo. He is the creator of Xevious, and when his other super famous video game creation of the early 1980s got an animated adaptation in the early 2000s, he acted as a producer on that. By the way, the Tower of Jiraga really isn't worth watching, though they do have an amusing episode in the middle where the characters all essentially play the Tower of Jiraga arcade game for an episode. While I don't believe for a second that Endo's involvement would improve Xevious the movie, the fact that G-Station didn't even have a nod towards his approval was not a good sign. Takeru was played by Katsuaki Arima, a voice actor who's been around for a long time, but it's all been bit parts. Sarah and Lu Mi were played by Ryoka Yuzuki, and while she hasn't had many starring roles, she's at least had more prominent ones. The one she's probably best known for is in Naruto, where she plays Ino. Martha was played by Katsuaki Arima, and while she hasn't been active in a while, she had a few big roles in the 90s, particularly in Sailor Moon where she was Chibi Usa. Beyond that, well, if you listen really closely, you might hear one or two lines from Kazuya Nakai. He plays one of the pilots or soldiers who die at the beginning, and these days he's doing pretty well by playing Zoro on One Piece. As for the animation production, the information is a little bit thinner there. I have a promotional puff piece, but it mostly has unhelpful information like how the movie will include sound editing, and they wanted to have the characters do something called acting on screen. I did find a couple of interesting things in between those nuggets of wisdom. They used a motion capture rig for the character animation. Since none of that character animation is available to us, I can't really say how effective it was. The other thing is how they determined how long the movie would be. Xevious is 75 minutes long, and that's because that's how much hard drive space they had. Yes, really. There's one last thing to cover here, and that's the film's reception. Okay, it's a film that ran for 1 week, maybe 100 people saw it, and then they essentially took it out and buried it in a hole in the ground. So you can make a safe assumption that it wasn't very good. But we really can't tell. I mean, I don't see anything promising in that minute and 30-second long preview, but we just can't know. However, I did find comments from 2 people who saw Xevious in that brief time that it was available. They both hated it. One of them was a very brief statement that they didn't like the movie, and the other was quite a bit longer, a lot more rambly, kind of like this video, and found it to be derivative and cheap looking. So I guess that would mean Xevious has 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. Now despite that, I still want to see the movie. It's a unique artifact that hardly anybody has had the opportunity to view. The only way I see that happening, though, is if somebody leaks Namco's work print. Namco's not going to release it on their own, and it's very likely that the home release was cancelled before any DVDs or VHS copies were made. With Groove Corporation out of business and their assets lost, it's unlikely that the movie will turn up from that direction. It's very likely that this trailer, and the clip that Namco included in their video, will be the only thing that we ever see of the movie.